to the spot, the Stacked After Hours spot. I am your host, Natalie Cosby, and welcome to the show for Grown Folks Talk. Tonight's topic, we are talking about, are you the rock star or the backup singer? Love and narcissism. So y'all get ready, get those cocktails, keep those fingertips nice and loose because we want to hear your questions and comments for tonight's show. And here at Shaw, we always keep it lit and enlightening. So take us there, Mr. M. New. We have a brand new panel tonight. We have a bunch of newbies, so I'm super excited. I've known all of these people for quite some time, so I'm super, super excited because I think this is going to be good. We're going to lead this whole conversation out. So let's start. New to the panel. He is new to our show. He's a DJ and a media creative, and he doesn't really like to really talk or watch stuff that he's not working on. But he's a world traveler. Look at him, looking all exquisite. Mr. William Goodwill Ellis. Say hello, Will.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, so distinguished. Look at him. Look at him. Next, she is Southern. She is sexy. She went to an all-girls Catholic high school from 6 to 12. That makes sense. You got to sleep on them Catholic girls. Welcome back, Dr. Tanera Matthews.
Woo! Glad to be here.
Hello, hello. Oh, look, I've been trying to get this lady on our show for a minute. She is a retired healthcare executive. She has been featured in Essence as an ageless beauty, which she is. And she is my kinfolk. She's my sister, Miss Janice Cosby Adams. Hey, beautiful. She's brave, sexy, and sick. That's what we call her. And then finally, he is back. He's our in-house Idris. We love him and his amazing eyebrows and that damn voice. Lord have mercy. Welcome back. Oh, and he also, fun fact, he was an engineer at the Jackson compound. We got to talk about that, Rashad. Look at you doing things. Welcome, Mr. Coles. Hello, Mr. Rashad. You on mute, babes. You on mute. Say something for us. Thank you. Then finally, he's our co-host. He's our in-house therapist tonight. He coaches his girls' basketball team. He has 5 daughters. Bless you. Bless you. He's a therapist and expert and will be guiding us in this conversation. Welcome, Patrick Crawford. Hi, Patrick. Say hello. Everybody is on mute. Make sure y'all unmute yourselves. So tonight, and y'all see Sunshine is in the audience, so she's going to be giving us her commentary from there. But we're going to go ahead, and somebody has written a letter, and that's always what stems our conversations. So I got a letter from one of our viewers, and it goes like this. Dear Sa, I live with my boyfriend Derek and his daughter from a prior marriage. I would describe myself as a beautiful woman, slightly overweight, fairly introverted, and educated. I haven't had many serious relationships in a long time, but when I do, I put my head down, my heart in, and give it my all. My boyfriend, Derek, is fine as hell. He has a way about him, a great speaking voice and charming. I don't know, and I don't have any direct knowledge of him ever cheating on me, but I'm starting to wonder with his inconsistent behavior and attitude towards me at times. For example, the other day, I come home from a long day at work. I walk through the door. I'm amazed to find Derek sitting alone at the dining room table, candles lit, beautiful dinner, and a beautiful dinner prepared with his own hands. Well, you can imagine what that led to that night. I was a bit stressed though that night because I needed to finish a little work for a big promotion and presentation that I was up for the next morning. So it was really huge for me and I wanted to get it done. And he knew that. Oddly, the next morning he appeared cold. He didn't even make enough coffee for me, and never wished me good luck on the presentation. I sent him a text message as soon as it was over, and he didn't respond. In fact, we never talked to the end of the day until I got a text from him stating that he was having dinner with friends. He did say I was welcome to come to the restaurant if I wanted. I really didn't want to, and I wasn't feeling great about the presentation, but I just wanted to go home. But I decided to show up and promised myself some me time later. Arriving at the restaurant, I could hear him holding court, talking at length about a new song he had written. We got home and we engaged in some small talk, and we discussed what needed to be done for his daughter the next day and started to prepare for bed. When I asked him about the song he was talking about, at the restaurant, he talked for the next hour about himself, his efforts to become a top songwriter for famous recording artists such as Maxwell, John Legend, the likes, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, he said he was invited for the following month to go to Hollywood for a couple of weeks to seal the deal, and that he was going to need me to watch Sasha, his daughter, while he was gone. It sounded like puffery to me. The only song, to his credit, that was a jingle that he sold for a few $1,000s for a TV commercial to a personal injury attorney. Shade. But I enthusiastically congratulated and supported him on his success. Then he asked me then I asked him if he had gotten the text about my big presentation at work. He said he was too busy that day and never had a chance to check his phone. But I knew he wasn't being honest because the iMessage immediately said read instead of delivered. He just didn't even bother to respond. When I called him on it, he blew up and said I was being petty. And he reminded me that he had enough talent for both of us and can make us both rich one day. And if I wasn't smart enough to appreciate that, there are plenty of women who would. That really hurt me. Don't get me wrong, I really love him, and and we have wonderful times together, and I'm committed to building a life with him and his daughter. But coming to the realization that he does not see me because he just can't see past himself. I have dreams that he doesn't support, yet he wants my undivided attention when it comes to his grand plan. He's hot and cold. His decisions on our relationship matter, and I'm hardly ever consulted. I know that I'm a bit demure, but I'm feeling like I'm setting myself on fire just to keep him warm. What gives Saab? Please help. That's a lot. So, thoughts. Rock star, narcissist. What do y'all think? What do y'all think is going on? How can we help this lady?
Well, realistically, can we judge this off of an instance? Is it typically like this? Is this like regular behavior that has, occurred throughout their relationship? Or is it just like a moment that, because I think sometimes what happens in relationships, especially if you've been in it for a minute, we're human beings, we're organic beings. And so we change from time to time. It could be possible that, there's some stuff that's happening outside of this in terms of their relationship and their communication. And it also could be something that's happening in terms of his life where, he hasn't been doing so well, perhaps, and now he's starting to see, it's just a lot. I'm just remiss to make any judgment based off of this particular instance.
I agree with that totally. And at the beginning of the letter, I guess I wanted to hear more about this dinner that he cooked, that he prepared by hand. So, I was pretty impressed with that. So I was thinking she would kind of, dive into that a little bit more, but it just immediately transitioned to how he treated her the next day. I don't know if I even felt like true appreciation for that night. So I don't know if it was reactionary. So I feel like there was like a gap right there that could have changed his mood based on her not appreciating him. I don't know. You're on mute, Natalie.
She was preoccupied with something at work, and she couldn't really enjoy it. She was surprised, but she was preoccupied because she's like, they both knew she had this big presentation.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Jan.
She's on mute as well.
Am I on mute?
Now we
Sorry.
hear you.
Okay. I don't see it as narcissistic behavior. It sounds like that he had something going on in his life, something big. It sounds like something similar to what I have going on in my life right now. My husband has a big project going on and he's very involved in it. And we were at our clubhouse tonight and he had to leave me at dinner and go outside and talk to his people for about 15 minutes. And it's a deal. And I don't feel that is anything taken away from me, but it's his project. And it's just his time to do something away from me. So I don't see it as a bad thing at all.
Mm. Okay.
I don't.
All right. Cool.
And I think the challenge is nowadays, everybody's a therapist, everybody's a doctor, because we have access to internet. And, you see an article and it says 5 things that means you're dating a narcissist.
Right,
and you read those 5
right.
things. And then all of a sudden, stuff that's very normal and not normal, stuff that's very human, you can easily get diagnosed and canceled or whatever it is. And so I think we have to be wary of that too. That's not to say that they don't have some stuff they need to work through, but to automatically make it about, well, this person's a narcissist or this person's abusive or whatever it is. And look, there are some narcissists out there, there are some abusive people, but when we just throw those titles around, it sometimes alleviates the self-reflection and the responsibility and the agency on the part of the people who are making those accusations. And so I feel like it's a better route to kind of communicate with each other to find out what's happening versus just blanket labeling things and diagnosing people.
I think a lot of people self-diagnose themselves based off of YouTube. No, I'm gonna let our therapist kind of talk, because I agree with you, Will, about that. Go ahead, Patrick. You're on mute. You're on mute still. Patrick, you're still on mute. Yep. There you go. You got it. I think you're still on mute. Don't worry about it. Okay, we'll come back. You're still on mute. So I think the thing is, it's just like, do we all not have certain qualities that people claim as narcissistic or whatever? Like we all, I was going through like there's like 1,000, it's like at least 20 qualities I saw that can be considered as somebody who is a narcissist, so on and so forth. And I think when I was reading about it, it's just like mask your self-esteem, masking low self-esteem. I feel like we all have done that in some sense of some form in our relationships when we're feeling some kind of way, or we try to be emotionally reasoning with our decisions. And I think is it sometimes we're just selfish or self-preserving.
So as you're saying that, I keep reflecting back on this letter. If I had to talk specifically to self-esteem, I still think there was a lack of appreciation of the female to the male. And I think it was reactionary. And I think that's where something potentially was masked by the male, is that I think he didn't communicate. I think the issue here is kind of a lack of communication. I didn't really like how instead of communicating, he basically said, if you don't appreciate me, I can find someone else that will appreciate me. I think that was symbolic of what the true issue was, but it didn't seem like they took the opportunity to self-reflect or to communicate on the topic. It just became this jab kind of thing. So sometimes when I hear people that jab instead of, I guess become vulnerable and express themselves, I think that sits on something. I don't want to say low self-esteem. I don't know. It could be a variety of things, but I think there's something else going on internally when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I also would like to add to that. It sounds to me like not narcissism. It sounds more like codependency to me.
Mm.
Their actions are driven by the other's actions. So rather than simply voicing their point of view, they basically just began to act before they began to ask questions. I think the first thing we should do before we act is ask a question, either to ourselves or additionally to ourselves and to our partners, that so we don't run into that trap of codependency.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Am I here now?
yeah,
Can you guys hear me now? Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Okay, perfect. So, one of the things that I was just thinking about is that I think that the letter is really seeking what's known as reciprocity in relationships. And when you hear a perspective from an individual, they're looking at it from how they view it and the information that they are contributing to that assessment. But when you really sit back and you talk about it from a mental health standpoint, it's one of a discussion in we didn't hear anything about the level of communication they have. We don't hear how they engage each other. Yes, we hear about what she's saying, that she had a big project, but he also has something that's just as important to him. So where was the level of communication between both of them to accentuate those things? Because a lot of times when there's a misinterpretation about whether or not a person is being selfish or egocentric with regard to their particular priority, I think that the lack of communication is really one of the things that you're really focused on. I mean, if I was doing an assessment, I don't have enough information to say, oh, this personality disorder is assigned, or the narcissistic personality is assigned to him based upon the fact that there's not a lot of longevity with regard to even the conversation. It's just this one specific incident that occurred. But I really believe that more of it is tied to really the lack of communication and the expectations that are required within a relationship, especially one where you are cohabitating and he's talking about what he needs from her. He's voicing that based upon her letter. And if she's reluctant to engage in that, then I think that that's a level of communication that she also has to hold herself to, as far as being able to say, this is what's going on.
So I think my question is that what, because I hear so many people like, oh, they're a narcissist, they're this, like Will was saying. Is that really what's the lack of communication, the unrealistic expectations that just we've always had, but now we just want to put a label on it for people who we don't agree with or who don't see us? Is that what's going on? Go ahead, Janice.
So Nat, I was married to a narcissist, a true narcissist. I don't think that he gave a damn about what I thought. My opinion did not count at all. It was all about him and what he thought. So you can communicate. It's not about communication with a narcissist. That's my opinion. It's just about them, because that's who they are. It's just about me. And if you don't share that opinion, his opinion, then it doesn't count.
Was there a lack of empathy or compassion or caring within the relationship that you're speaking of, Ms. Adams?
Yes, you can call me Jan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jan. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. He had to be right.
Okay.
He had to be right all the time. And here's the thing. He didn't complain about anything, ever. But if I brought something up, he could not deal with anything that I brought up, any situation. If I was unhappy about anything, he couldn't deal with that at all. He refused to deal with it at all. So there was no communication. I don't think you can really truly communicate with a narcissist at all.
Yeah, a lot of times when it comes to diagnosing personality disorders, which is what narcissistic personality disorder and some other personality disorders, they're very challenging with regard to diagnosing. And the only reason we say that is because we are looking for three particular things that we look for when we do any type of diagnosing. We're looking for duration, frequency, and intensity, and how it disrupts the different domains that a person lives in. So it may be occupational, maybe social, it could be psychological. So we look at the disruption of these traits, and we see to what extent, with regard to how often it's occurring and what's the disruption. And so, once again, never had a chance to talk to your husband, ex-husband, excuse me. And so, when people start assigning, as Natalie said, these labels or these diagnoses, from a mental health standpoint, from a diagnostic standpoint, we look at more than just the traits. We look at the longevity of it, because some of these things could also be impacted based upon socialization. They could be impacted based upon trauma that they've experienced. So I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying when we throw around these titles and we throw around these labels, there's a lot more that goes into it than just the fact that, oh, well, these are the things that I have seen, and these are the things that I am going to dwell upon, because people are like onions. There are layers to them. And once again, if you're talking about the layers of an individual, then, and once again, I'm not talking about your ex-husband. I never met him. But when we're talking about diagnosing someone, we're looking at not only the external or the symptomologies they present with, we're looking at the foundational things that have, shifted their course to evolving into the person that they are.
So I have a question. So, like, Janice, and I think this is a thing. I kind of want to put this graphic up because I feel like, do we all have certain not even just certain qualities that are self-preserving that some consider narcissistic, right? So, I mean, if I looked at, I think, and even the audience member, like, if there's particular qualities that you can identify or you have witnessed in those relationships, what were they, and what was the cause of that? Certain things that you have experienced or certain things that you have maybe even done. Because I know I've done some of those. Mm-hmm. Like I know, sometimes I know I lack boundaries. I can be overly concerned with my appearance at times. I do know how to manipulate. I'm sounding like a narcissist, but when I think about it, emotional reasoning, and what caused those things, I think it was just being uncomfortable and not really, part of it was not knowing how to communicate. But I think even the whole lack of empathy, is it just more a protection versus saying, like, I don't have any empathy, like I'm just going to act like I don't care because I've been hurt so much.
So Natalie, can we have traits? To me, narcissism is...
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
I feel like, and I understand diagnosis, et cetera. I mean, but just real world, just, the uneducated, version of it. I think it's more when it is excessive, like to a whole nother level.
Thank you, Mr. M. You can bring the graphic down. Go ahead. Continue.
So, I mean, I think everyone can exhibit some of these qualities at some point or in some dynamic, friendships, relationships, whatever. You can exhibit these things, but, I think narcissism, and I hate to, I actually feel like more often men are labeled as narcissists versus women.
Yes.
I don't really know why or what that dynamic is, but it seems to be more of a term reflective of men. And I do feel like I've dated narcissists. And I think it's been excessive throughout the relationship, like the manipulation and that sort of thing. I hate to use an ex-husband as well, but, to me, it was a power struggle. And when someone desires power and control so much that they will manipulate kids in an effort to have that control, to me, that's excessive. I mean, I can manipulate people. I think we all can, get out of homework or get out of, whatever. But I think when it gets to a level where they just they have this lack of control within themselves if they can't control you. And you see patterns of that all the time, you know, I think that's when you kind of move to more a label of narcissism.
Gentlemen, yeah. Is it something that's found more often in men, especially successful men?
Statistically, yes.
Okay.
Statistically, just to answer that question. But once again, I think that the opposite of, well, not even the opposite, the backdrop of it is that, are these things developed? Because remember, some of it can be environmental, some of it can be hereditary based, but the reality is a lot of it is based upon socialization. And so I agree with the graphic you put out, because some of those things that are developed are linked to a number of other things that are unknown. We can look at, anybody can fit the diagnosis or the signs and symptoms of any of the diagnostic statistical manual or your mental illnesses, because we experience them throughout life.
Right.
Now,
So
I believe that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. But I really wanted to know, like, because we have Rashad and Will. Have you, like, do you guys, especially in the industry, y'all are both in entertainment or creatives. Do you?
Ask the question. Ask me a specific question.
I'm just saying, is it something that you see amongst brothers in your industry? Even do you see, and how does it play? How has it played out for you?
Well, it's a complicated question. I'll try to answer it without going all over the place. One, I think we live in a narcissist society right now. We live in a cult of personality where you are rewarded for projecting your yourself, your ego to the world via social media. I mean, it's literally been gamified. Like, you literally get quantified likes based on, actions that you perform. It's training you to, seek this sense of approval. And I honestly see that trait and that energy manifests in both men and women, and just people in general. I think, I don't want to get too gender specific, but I think why you see it end up happening with men a little bit more, and this can get prickly. I think that relationships are complicated, especially when you talk about like men and women, because men and women are different. They have different systems, they have different biologies, they have different frameworks in the way they see the world. And so sometimes the things, that irk us about the opposite gender is because we're expecting those people to behave like how we would behave. We're expecting them to have the same voice that we would have, and it's not realistic. My wife doesn't speak like me. She doesn't see the world like me. I have a different kind of outlook from both a nature and a nurture standpoint, right? I have certain hormones in me that make me behave a certain kind of way, whether you want to agree to that or not. It's true, right? Testosterone and a bunch of other things, are more prevalent. It's going to create more kind of, certain types of behavior versus some of the stuff that she has. And so it's very easy to focus on those differences and say, well, there's something wrong with this person, or there's something right with this person because of their proximity to your behavior type, right? Versus sometimes saying, oh, this person's different than me. Let me treat them differently. Let me give them a different type of grace because of who they are, and vice versa. And I think that's probably the crux of relationships, is understanding your differences and then finding this place. Again, not to say that there are not narcissists out there, and they're not like people who are overly self-absorbed, but I have experienced being labeled as a narcissist just because I had a certain amount of aggression towards getting things done in a certain part of my life, because I was worried about getting older and said, I got so much time, I gotta focus, and at this part of my age, maybe I can't hear all the stuff you're talking about right now, because I just can't focus on it. I gotta,
and are you considered dismissive and elite? Was it more you were dismissive?
It depends on and being vulnerable. It depends on who you're talking to. I'm a Scorpio with a lot of layers, and so there are some people who think, my God, this guy's very aloof and elitist, because I'm quiet. I might come into a space and be quiet or not speak to somebody. They think, oh, who's he think he is? Not knowing that inside I'm actually feeling really, really awkward and nervous. But I just grew up in Brooklyn, and I have a game face, and so people think that I'm trying to detach. But I'm like, I don't know what's going on right now. I feel scared, and I wish somebody would talk to me. You don't know, and so, and again, we're in this place where everybody's a guru, everybody's whatever, and you see somebody's meme on their page and be like, Will's of this, or Natalie's of that. This person's suffering from this. No one's qualified to make any diagnosis, but it's just it's just something that happens. Again, it's not to say that there's not a whole lot of people out there who are suffering from different mental and emotional needs, but I just think we have to be careful and have a lot more grace for each other and try to and focus on the humanity. Perfect example is I don't want to open a can of worms, but even the stuff that happened with Will Smith recently,
We just talked about that last week.
like
Yes.
something pops off and we're quick to just kind of take one side or the other, or versus coming from a more human standpoint, saying, well, what's this person? What happened to create this? Right? Before we judge, what happened to create this? And the same thing happens in relationships. It's like, whoa, this person's acting a certain kind of way. What's happening to create this?
Yep. I agree. The grace part is really hard because of social media. And somebody said, I wonder if there's a rise in female narcissism due to social media and having more female professionals.
Yes.
Who said yes like that?
I said that. I think that I don't want to make this gendered. I think it's easy to pick on. I don't want to start any fights. I think it's easy to pick on men because we tend to be so outward and boisterous, and we behave in a certain kind of way. So it's
I want
easier
to
to
talk
see it.
to Black women because I have two very successful Black women on here, and very at top of their professions. And ladies, go ahead, continue, Will. But I
think that's it. I think again, there's a rise in narcissism or narcissist-like behavior because of this the space we're in right now. Like you should look at Instagram and TikTok or any of those type of situations. Just what's in, like this whole idea of an influencer. There was no influencers before like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Everybody's an influencer. You're literally paid to just project your what's on your mind and what you're feeling. That's going to affect both men and women. It's going to affect anybody.
Okay. All right. Janice, because I look, my sister is beautiful, and she don't bow your head. I'm just saying, what do you think? Because you are on social media, and you have a public presence because of what you did.
I don't know how to answer that. What's the question? What is the question?
Somebody said,
what are you asking me?
There's a rise. This is actually from the chat. I wonder
what
if
did they
there's
say?
a rise in female narcissism due to social media and having more, I'm going to say, successful female professionals.
I don't know. I can only relate to my situation. I can only relate to what I went through, and the person that I was married to, I was a healthcare administrator. He was a physician, and he was a narcissist. I mean, there was nothing that I could do that was right. He was very controlling, and I mean, he even told me at one time, no one will love you but me. No one will like you but me. That's crazy. That's some crazy shit. That's some crazy shit. I mean, that's some crazy shit. So, that it has nothing to do with, I think it's his background. I really felt like that I was not acceptable, that he just made me feel that he was better and he was the shit. And so it was really tough. It was really tough. It was tough.
Because I especially, yep. I know, babe. I think
tough.
so I think when we, especially in relationships, because I do want to get back to relationships and the relationship point of how all this kind of comes together. Because I think and I don't know the process of somebody who has certain qualities. I'm not going to call them a narcissist, but just in that space of Janice's ex-husband, or even I think Tanera's ex-husband, how do you even get in that space with that person? Are we attracted? Are you an empath? Because they say that's what usually attracts people to you, because you are, you're open to receiving, and those people see that. Is that what it is?
I have two comments, if I can jump in. So one, I think there's kind of an assumption here that a narcissist is more common in someone that has success or money. I personally don't think that's the case. I think narcissists come all a variety of ways. I think too, and again, I'm putting this more on it being more common with men being labeled as narcissists. And I do think women, can be extremely narcissistic, especially now that women are, living their life for them, single, doing their own thing. They're like independent. They've kind of lost that desire to be vulnerable and those things. So I definitely think there is potentially a rise in it. But I think we've always felt like the man is the strength or the leader or the one that, you want that. You want to feel safe with the man. So I think when I think of the qualities that I look for, I think a narcissist is very confusing because a narcissist can look like that man that you're looking for. And so I think that's where you almost have to be careful, or you can be, caught off guard, or you need time to really differentiate, is he being a man and leading me, which is the role that, I prefer in a relationship, or is this a controlling situation? So I think that's where it's difficult, because I like a man that leads.
But Tanera, I think also narcissists, they're mostly narcissists with you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not that way with other people in their lives. They are more controlling with the woman or someone else in their life, but it's not the same way with other people in their lives. He wasn't that way with his mother or his friends. They wouldn't have never considered him a narcissist, ever. It was all about controlling me, but no one else. So a narcissist is very specific in who they target, I think. Very specific.
Is that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that was something I was thinking about as well, Janice. Is it also sometimes, and I'm the devil's advocate guy. I always like to throw in, stuff from a different way of thinking. I wonder if sometimes it's also a case of just misalignment, or, you know what I mean? Where, I was talking to a friend about this concept of, of like the nice breakup, right? Where the both of you are in a mature place where you can kind of state that, like, you know what, you're cool, I'm cool, we're just not cool together. We don't align, right? Because I think a lot of times it's like when you break up or when you're going through stuff, it's like, well, there's something wrong with this person, something wrong with you. And it's like this kind of blame game that happens. And so I wonder if sometimes, Tanera made a good point, like that person, that guy or woman who's very successful, you have to be aggressive. You have to kind of have tough skin. There's a lot of stuff that comes along with, there's a lot of traits that come along with being successful that can look like narcissism or look like a lack of empathy or whatever it is. And what I found is, in talking to some friends and seeing different relationships is that, sometimes people grow apart, right? Like you might have, when that relationship started, both of you might have been aligned with some things, but as time went on, this person's more focused on this versus this person more focused on that, or this person has needs that are different than the needs that when they started off, and things are starting to go, starting to veer off to the, a hard left or a hard right. And I wonder if sometimes, it's more issue of like, hey, you know what? This doesn't work anymore. We're not
But
aligned anymore.
Janice,
You know what I mean?
but
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but is it goodwill?
Yep. Or you can
But
just say, Will.
but my husband, he never wanted to separate. I asked for the divorce. He did not. He never wanted to separate. He just wanted to control. He wanted to control. He didn't want a divorce at all.
Was
He
he
didn't want
always
to
like
leave.
this?
Well, I want to
Always.
go ahead, Patrick. I was going to get Patrick's point of view.
He didn't want to leave.
Go ahead.
So I just want to add some foundation. Typically with narcissistic personality disorders, they're not targeting anyone because the narcissistic personality is who they are. So
Right.
it's not going to be something where with Jan, it's okay, you're the only person. Now, once again, I've never met him and I can't say that he is or is not. But what I will say is that because that's who they are, then that's who they are all the time. It's not where they are able to pick and choose because it's still a personality disorder. Now, there may have been he may have directed some things towards you, and I may not have, as a clinician, I may not have diagnosed him with narcissistic personality because of what he's done specifically to you. It could have been another mental illness that he was suffering from that has impaired his ability to be mentally healthy. But we can't, when we look at a disorder or a diagnosis, especially a mental illness, it's not where you are saying, oh, I'm going to say, I'm only going to do this towards this person. If we look at mood, if we look at any the major depressive disorder, we look at any of the mood disorders, any of the psychotic disorders, any of the those severe, where you can talk about schizophrenia, they're not going to be that way just in that one particular instance. That's who they are.
And Crawford, you are totally right because my ex-husband, he would say to me, we would be out with friends, and he would say, I didn't pay attention. I would say, did you hear what so-and-so said? That was such an interesting conversation. And he would say, I didn't give a shit what he said. I wasn't paying attention. I don't listen to what anybody says. They're not saying anything that's interesting to me. You're right, because it had nothing to do. This is beyond me.
Okay.
You're right. You're totally right what you just said. Totally right.
So I wanted Rashad, because I wanted to get you in. I haven't heard from you tonight. And sometimes you always drop the wisdom with them brows. And I know go ahead.
I was thinking possibly that narcissism could actually masquerade as, a person's trauma is what I'm saying, can actually disguise itself to someone else as narcissism, a person who could be selfish, damaged from previous relationships, abandonment issues, and things like that, or control issues, can disguise itself possibly as narcissism. So I just wanted to expand that out just a little bit more. Because personally, I don't know necessarily that I've ever dated or dated a narcissist, because I've never been with someone who was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So in that, for me, I think it's easier for me to say possibly that whatever the issues that I'm experiencing on the ground, could it be apathy? Everything turns into a thing about them, or blowing up at the slightest perceived slights, seem to be more of emotional issues more than a psychological problem.
Right. So I'm just like, is it just that they're an asshole or a motherfucker? Could that just be it?
That's what I think. I think sometimes 1000%.
They just not for you. Like, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Janice. Janice, you're on mute, babe. You're on mute.
Okay. You're totally right. But the bigger issue of all of this, dealing with a narcissist, is why Jan, why were you dealing with him? Why did you stay with a narcissist?
That's exactly right.
That's the issue. So that's on me. I have to own that. I have to own that.
Right.
Why, Jan, were you dealing with a narcissist? I was with him for 17 years. I was with him for 17 years.
So
that says more about me than it does about him.
I want to talk about like when you are dating a motherfucking asshole, a narcissist, whatever we call them, people that are not aligned to you. What were you like? I think within the letter, she's like, I'm trying to create fire just to keep this man warm. I got what she was saying. Like, I'm trying to do all these things just to make sure that he's happy, but it's never enough. So right. like it's out of the box shit sometimes, right? Or whatever, to just keep it going. But
well, let's get saucy, because I've almost finished my drink and I'm almost tipsy. You know, the reality is that a lot of times people aren't fair or honest, and the same shit you hate about a person is the same shit you love about a person. And so you'll have dudes dating bitches, you know, because she's spicy and she's fiery and whatnot. But when she throw the drink in his face, or when she smack him in front of his boys, whatnot, you know, so it's like that comes with that. You know, you like that dude who's like at the head of his game and aggressively, like, you know, going through corporate America and knocking everybody off and just cutting everybody's throats till he can get to his VP position, but you don't want him to be an asshole. Like those, you can't separate those traits sometimes. And so, you know, I think we all, including myself, have to take a bit of accountability for the reality that, like, that in most cases, that person probably was the person that they are right now from the beginning.
Jan, I want to go back to Janice and Tanera. I know, Tanera, you were with your husband as well for a long time. I know you didn't say, but what kept y'all there for so long? Like, what was it?
Well, he wasn't an asshole.
I want to say, what initially got you?
Well, he wasn't an asshole. I don't know if that is the same as being a narcissist, then maybe he wasn't a narcissist, but he was very charismatic, you know, and treated me very well. You know, for most of the marriage, I mean, I kind of felt like he was my best friend, but at the same time, I do think I lost myself in that relationship, in the sense, some of the things Janice talked about, where everything kind of went his way. You know, he kind of had the final word. And I think why we stay is, I mean, one, we get married, well, sometimes when you get married young, you confuse the role of a man and, you know, how that's supposed to happen. And as life, you know, goes on and you mature, you start to realize that you're completely gone. You don't know yourself anymore. And that, you know, and a lot of that, you know, I think a lot of the actions, again, go into the manipulation. And when you're able to see that more clearly, that's when you deviate to a narcissist. I'll tell you this. I had a problem marriage towards the end. I never called him a narcissist. We did go to counseling. We had a Black man as a counselor. He was the first to introduce the concept and told him he was a narcissist. And so at that point is when I started doing my research, and I kind of reflected back to see, you know, what was happening. And I think part of being a narcissist is I thought I wasn't enough. I had 3 kids. I didn't think anyone would marry me again or be with me, and that was all the things that were being fed into my head, you know, because at the end of the day, he was trying to kind of, you know, minimize me in that space, separating me from friends, you know, all the things that nurtured my self-esteem, you know, growing up. A lot of those things were removed. So he became that best friend, that person I listened to. And what he said, you know, whether we fight it and say, oh, that's not the case, it sticks in your head. So over time, you get stuck.
So Tanera, were you love bombed? I think that's what they call it, love bombing.
I didn't know what that term meant. What is love bombing?
What is it? Go ahead. Was somebody going to say? Love bombing? Go ahead.
So I believe that love bombing is a terminology where you are so overwhelmed with the love, the affection, the attention, and the meeting of your needs because it does not detach or does not take away from their ability to, still focus on them. So you are overwhelmed with those things. And so when you get caught up in the overwhelming love and compassion and connection, then that means that you may sometimes be unaware that that behavior is their way to pull you in, to drag you in, so that you will fall in line with their perception of what should occur and what should happen. But I did want to ask a question to the panel, if this is okay. And
Go
this is about removing the titles or the labels. How much of and Janice, you said something that was very, very interesting, and you said you were with your ex-husband for 17 years. And this is going to go to the panel. How much of who you were when you got married were you at the end of that marriage? Because there's something I want to, and this is for everybody, whether they're married or whether they are whether they've been in a long-term relationship. How much of who you were in the beginning are you now? And have you noticed the transition? And when did you start noticing that transition of who you were?
What's your name? Who
Patrick.
just asked that? Patrick,
Patrick.
I love you.
Yeah.
Such a great question. I was so messed up. And I became a totally different, I lost myself. I totally lost myself in that marriage. We were both very professional people. He was a physician, I was a healthcare executive. But what we became was an albatross. And I loved him. I still believe that he loved me, but it was all about control more than anything. It was all about control. So I didn't even recognize myself by the time that it was over. And that's why I needed to leave the relationship.
Okay.
I didn't know who I was.
And that's understandable. I think that because there's a question I always ask people, and I'm gonna ask the panel this question: are you so aware of who you think you are that you're unaware of who you really are?
That's a powerful question.
And I'll answer that in my own roundabout way. Who the hell is the same person they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago? I think that's scary if you're the same person. I think if you haven't grown or gone through some stuff, and I think we all got to do that work, whatever that work looks like. People call it shadow work. People call it, wellness work, or whatever you want to call it. We all have to go deep, and in fact, it shouldn't be work. It should be practice. It should be an ongoing practice. In the same way, you should be going to the gym or working out or eating a certain kind of way, all the time, right? Not just on a diet, not just in the beginning of the year. It should be a constant thing. And that internal work of looking at your heart, looking at your mind, asking yourself, looking in the mirror, whether you're doing meditation or whatever it is, and saying, who am I? Right? And really, really having an honest answer at that. And your partner should be doing the same thing. And you guys should be having these regular conversations so you can, stay aligned, because it's just human nature. There's two organic beings, who are going through all the trauma of dealing with their boss and racism and everything else that's happening in the world and whatnot. You're going to do this. And, and until you have this conversation, say, hey, who am I? Who are you? And you're, oh, okay, bring it back. You bring, and so.
But isn't that kind of just a part of life? You ebb and flow with people, and you and you ebb and flow with yourself.
Yes, exactly. But and when you ask that question, it might be sometimes that, like, you know what? We don't belong together anymore. This doesn't, like, we're not, I want something different out of life, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Or we grew apart, or, I might've been focused on these things at one point in my life, but now I don't care about those things anymore. I think most of the stuff I cared about 10 years ago, I don't even remember.
Right.
All that stuff is irrelevant.
Yeah. Rashad? That's a great question, Patrick.
I think I've discovered who I am
Okay.
after going through marriage and eventually divorce. I think prior to getting married, I don't know. I think I had a lot of issues with having to portray a certain level of aggression, or I had to be in control of a situation. Um, because, as you know, being in the entertainment industry or in any type of, you know, highly creative field, it's a lot of competition. So you have to, you have your game face on a lot, and I think I brought that a lot to my marriage and to my relationship. And I think once that relationship ended, I was able to take stock in myself and say that I needed to be more patient. I needed to give more grace. I needed to like just kind of sit back and just like not be so um on all the time and just kind of let things, just experience things and not attempt to make things happen, but just
Right.
allow things to happen. So I think in that regard, I definitely grew into the person that I am now, and I'm definitely 180 degrees different from who I was when I was married.
Yeah. T.
Yes.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree with Rashad. You know, when I divorced and I was kind of going through this self-evaluation, someone actually suggested that I dig back into who I was before I got married. So I got married right out of college. So basically, you know, my childhood. And it wasn't to say that, you know, I haven't grown and matured and my experiences don't come with me. But I realized, like, when I looked at that particular person, that person was pretty much always happy, you know, life was kind of, you know, flowing. I didn't take anything like serious to the extent of getting up easily upset or, you know, reacting to things very easily, being, you know, judgmental in the sense of, you know, always thinking that someone may be coming at me a certain way, so I need to go back at them. A lot of that I realized was a product of, you know, my marriage and just kind of navigating that marriage. I learned a lot of traits that weren't necessarily embedded in me as a child, or it wasn't who I was. I still have some of them that I am still working on, but I think it is important to kind of reflect back. If you've been married, I was married 18 years. So, you know, it is important, I think, to reflect back to know who you are. You know, who are you at your core? And if you lost yourself at some point, you know, to begin to work on finding that person again.
Yeah.
There's there's a thing that I think about a lot of times when I ask that question. There's a training I do call "We Wear the Mask," and the one thing I want to say is that we are socialized from the very beginning to present in our professional selves. There is not a developmental process for us to understand emotions or to understand relationships. We kind of get thrust into them. We like a person in middle school or junior high, and then we gradually start to experience and we continue to grow. But the reality of it is that all of us have been indoctrinated into our professional worlds, and that's what we have mastered. And that's what we have become so equipped at doing, that when it comes to relationships, that we sometimes forget that there was not a handbook. So as we talk about the experiences that we've encountered after we have mastered our professional self, the one thing that I believe we sometimes take with us is our professional self into those intimate relationships. And
Mhm.
so a lot of times we don't always have the understanding or the information that allows for us to be as successful. So when we are identifying the narcissistic personalities or the narcissistic traits, are we looking at through the lens of our intimate development and years of experience, or are we looking at it through our professional, what we have presented with ourselves? And that's what people sometimes don't always take off that mask when they become intimately connected to someone and they allow for that to evolve and grow. So a lot of times what we may be getting, some people call it that representative. No, I believe it's just who they have mastered and what rewards they've gotten for mastering it. So that's what they take into their intimate personal relationships. And it's not until they take a step back and realize that the intimate relationships that they're in, that's not their mastered field. So it could be the profession of entertainment, it could be the profession of medical, it could be legal, it could be any of the things that we spent our entire life developing. But then once we get into an intimate relationship, then I believe the question becomes, how do we cultivate that part of ourselves? And I don't think we do as good a job until we're older and more mature and we start to realign our priorities. And that's when we start to realize the benefit and significance. I think that what Will was saying earlier is that reflection, I do that a lot in my marriage counseling. Every 6 months, you're evolving and growing, but you should also be having that conversation on an intimate level. When your discussion is strictly about professionalism and your work, that's not your intimate side. That's not what you are choosing to develop and grow. And so that's the reason I always ask that question, is because a lot of times people look at it from who they have mastered becoming for others, and they kind of have forgotten about the development of their intimate personal selves.
Patrick, you hit it on the head. Looking into the mirror and totally seeing who you are, and are you in that same place? We never get time to scratch the surface. I feel like this needs a part 2 and a 3, but we are going to go into the after party. I'm still learning myself and where we are and who we want to be and where I'm trying to be, and even doing that every day. So it's a constant reflection. It's a practice. It's understanding who and where you want to be at this point in your life, and also what you need and want. We're going into the after party. Come meet the panel in the after party. We are over. We'll see you there. See y'all next week. Thanks, guys.
Hey yo, I am power. In the belly of the beast, I'll never be devoured. Take a walk with me through the stomach of the institution. I just saw a problem running down the street from solution. I just saw a vampire sucking on the economic neck of the world we live in, and his teeth were electronic. I just saw a little boy beating up a Catholic priest. I just saw a half woman, but the other half was beast. In the kitchen baking up thirsty niggas she had to eat. Take a walk with me through the institutional factory. Oh, what a masterpiece. What a pursuit of the happy bee. What where nobody's living happily. And okie doke, yo, it had to be. We look outside of ourselves and criticize while we hiding ourselves. People are robbing, killing, and starving, but we still proud of ourselves. The world is turning, civilization is burning. Nobody's learning, nobody has a discernment. And I'm just trying to tell the truth, but fuck it, like, who am I? 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 Finity gotta be all of me, follow me, into me, out of me, ought to be. All that I ought to be audibly. This is an audible odyssey and could be part of the prophecy, part of me. So pardon me and pardon the part of me that flow from the artery wholeheartedly, heartily. I fail to go, gotta leave, gotta let you know. Gotta be what I need and the rest to show. Rest assured I'm next to blow and the rest to know what you already did. I talk it, I walk it, I are what I is. I am what I said I was, I'm who I were. That's why I do what I did. Yeah, I am silence. I am here to bring the noise and peace and the violence. I am all around, I'm everywhere, yet I am nowhere. I will take you to a place and tell you not to go there. I will look you in the face and tell a lie with honesty. My arrogance will not be televised without my modesty. The world is turning, civilization is burning. Nobody's learning, nobody has a discernment. I'm just really trying to tell the truth for real, but who am I? Am I?